it was briefly mentioned earlier, when it comes to the history of the Holocaust, we rarely ever speak about how the Nazis impacted Mizrahi Jews, particularly in Iraq. We know they
Mm.
played a big role in the Farhud massacres of Shavuot in 1941 and the Northern African nations. Can you speak a little bit about how the Nazis persecuted Jews outside Europe and how we can do a better job of including Mizrahi Jews into Holocaust education?
Absolutely. I think it also, I will say, it extends to Sephardic Jews too. I think that we primarily tell stories concerning Ashkenazi Jews. And like all discussions regarding Ashkenormativity, we have to be very sensitive, and we cannot demonize, the Ashkenazi Jews in this process. But absolutely, we should be doing a better job simply to understand the wider Jewish experience. The Farhud was definitely Nazi inspired, and I believe up to 1,000 Jews were murdered. It was incredibly violent, and it was incredibly shocking, I think, for the Iraqi Jewish community. I know Chen Mazig speaks a lot about it, and he is an amazing voice kind of speaking on behalf of the Mizrahi community. The Nazis also were in Tunisia, and there were Jews who died in bombing raids due to starvation, and also I think about 400 Jews were sent to forced labor. But also in Greece, in Salonika, that was the kind of Sephardic capital of Europe at that point, and that culture, those people, that culture, including Ladino, was totally destroyed. And I think what we have to do is just widen our gaze a little bit, because this is a story that affects all Jewish people, the Holocaust, but also anti-Semitism in general. And I think it actually further emphasizes the point of the totality of the Holocaust by better understanding how it impacted Mizrahi Jews, Sephardic Jews, and even Bet Israeli Jews. And again, as I said, with regards to kind of their interactions with the Ethiopians after the invasion. I think we just have to kind of record testimony like we've done a lot regarding kind of Ashkenazi Jews and also some Sephardic. We have to record testimony, speak to survivors while we can. But we also need to be giving space to scholars, regarding these different issues and coming together. But also, I'm going to say, I don't think we understand the Ashkenazi story particularly well either. There is this narrative that it was just Germany committing these crimes. That's not the case. The Germans had many collaborators in the Middle East, North Africa, in Southern Europe, but also in Central and Eastern Europe. So I think we have to do a better job of understanding every single story. But specifically, yes, absolutely, we have to do a better job of understanding Mizrahi stories, Sephardic stories, and Bet Israeli stories.
So there's also a bright spot, and I know this because it's on our calendar. I just Googled it to make sure that it was true. That I believe it was in, I'm not sure exactly which year, but the Moroccan king Mohammed V during World War II told the Nazis that they couldn't take his Jews because they went in and they were trying to deport them. So yeah, I could send you this link after. But when obviously, it's a known factor that as soon as Israel came around, all these Arab countries sort of said, like, if you support Israel in any way, you're out. So it's also it's nice to see a bright spot of like institutional defense of the Jews, especially a country like Morocco, where the Jews date back to the Inquisition.
Absolutely. So, and even the Albanian Muslims also protected Jews. I think we have to understand the nuance, the complexity. We have to understand, for example, the collaborations between the Palestinians with al-Husseini and the Nazis.
Yep.
That's really important. And we also have to understand, as you say, bright spots. Mm-hmm. It's really incredible. It's probably one of the most recorded, it was one of the most recorded events in human history because the Nazis kept so much, so many resources and so many statistics, but we're still learning. And we're in a race against time to kind of record the testimony of survivors. And again, that must be extended to include survivors from all over the world that experienced the Holocaust. But I think, even the fact that we're talking about it and the fact that, Chen talks about it and, I talk about it in my classes, I think that we're on the right track with regards to widening the story.
100%. What's one of the? I'm glad that you spoke about it because it's one of like the first things that we wanted to. We do like segments when it's just us two, and one of the deep dives that we wanted to do is, Nazi intervention in places like Iraq, where they took over the embassy and they translated Mein Kampf. They created a Nazi youth for the Iraqis, and like all that was in the 30s. So again, context that leads to violence.
And also, we can't understand that, or even the expulsion of the Mizrahi Jews and Sephardic Jews from the MENA region, if we don't understand the treatment of Jews in kind of Muslim lands for 1,000 or so years. If we're saying the same about anti-Semitism in Europe, say, the same applies. Anti-Semitism was systemic, it was institutional, it was embedded. And that, of course, has impacted how these societies view Israel. But we don't seem to make that connection. They're not just anti-Semitic because the state of Israel exists. Right. The reality is they were anti-Semitic long, long before, and they were persecuting Jews in those lands for hundreds of years.